Hey there, my name's Niandra. After a couple of bumps along the way, 222 is here for real in both competitive and quick play, with Arcade currently hosting Quick Play Classic if you want some unlocked games. I'd say the response has been mixed with a lean towards positive. What I thought I'd do is mainly focus on those positives, give a couple of downsides, and make a small list of things I'm personally not going to miss about old Overwatch. Let's start with number 4, being on a team with 3 to 5 support mains. Before Rolequeue, you'd sometimes get a team with multiple people who specialised in the same role and someone had to flex to another which they might be weak at. Tank seemed to be the least popular role and the one that would most often get filled into. I remember plenty of matches where our Reinhardt would say something like, "Okay guys, I'll try my best, but I'm actually an Ana main." Because of this, I spent like 60 hours grinding Orisa in quick play. If we had 3 support mains, I wanted to increase our chances of someone being able to fill. A small part of me was happy that goats existed because on the extremely rare occasion we had no DPS players, we could throw something together and my team wasn't just screwed. Although many skills like game sense and positioning transfer between characters, there's no real easy role that can just coast by. Players unfamiliar with tank tend to play very passively and don't make much space for the team. Players unfamiliar with support tend to have wonky heal priority and may not make full use out of their utility, while players unfamiliar with DPS tend to have weaker mechanical skill and target prioritization. Players will also be able to queue with people who main the same role. Before the lock, this was kinda hard to consistently do because you could easily be matched with people who also played it. With Rolequeue, there's nothing to stop a support duo heading into rank together, and this is cool because you'll be able to build all these little synergies. As Mercy, you probably trust your friend on Ana to cover you over a randomer. Unfortunately, the trade-off is we'll be losing out on wacky comps like 6 supports, which I've had a lot of fun with in the past, but how often would you really see it outside of 6 stacks? My other worry is that eventually we'll end up with a meta that would be countered by a composition we can't do, either heavy DPS or heavy tanks. Let's move on to number 3, big stacks are all picking DPS. 3, 4 and 5 stacks will still be able to dictate team composition if they wish, but they won't all be able to pick DPS unless they're in Quick Play Classic. I have seen people on Reddit defend these stacks by saying that maybe these people just want to have fun with their friends and they paid for the game so they can pick who they want. I get that, and ultimately I have no power to force people to change, but I am allowed to think it's a little selfish, especially towards the randomer. On the flip side though, if you're a stack that waits for everyone else to pick and are happy to flex, chances are you are all playing tank and healer and still not getting 222. I normally play quick play in a 3 stack and 95% of the time our randomers would all pick DPS. I know role locking quick play has been pretty controversial and a lot of people don't want it, but personally it's been really refreshing to not have matches like this anymore. Whether it was previously a stack all picking DPS or all of them having to fill from the randomers going DPS, Rolelock will bring us the fairest results. There are some downsides though. One is those who like to flex within their stacks will have to wait until they're back on the main menu, and I thought this felt a little clunky personally. The second downside is those who like to flex roles depending on map can't really do that anymore, which to me is probably the biggest loss. When you play with the same people, you're more likely to build these little strats. Some maps favour mobile heroes, some favour more stationary, and we did have a lot of fun swapping roles around that. Moving on to number 2, pre-round tilting due to insta-locks. I'm certain you've had matches where everyone loads in and immediately 3 or more people pick DPS. The countdown to round start is ticking and it looks like no one's gonna budge. This can make you feel frustrated before the rounds even started, and I know a lot of players would look at a team of 5 DPS and think, you know what, I might as well pick it too. I noticed people would react more positively to someone picking tank or healer first. I think a common mindset used to be, okay, this person clearly wants to try, so I will too. I've had comp matches where my team is running 4 or even 5 DPS and they're legit all playing really good, but the lack of sustain from having little to no tanks or supports means we can't quite win the fight. I remember multiple matches where I'd say pretty much that exact statement over voice chat after a lost King of the Hill round, with an emphasis on no one playing badly to avoid tilting someone. Sometimes people would change and sometimes they wouldn't, and it was really frustrating to lose a match that was absolutely winnable if one person had been willing to compromise. Especially when you're a person who will but can't. Like, sure, I can go tank, but then we have no healer, and vice versa. Tanks and healers generally need each other, the former particularly codependent. Have you ever played Reinhardt without a healer? It's awful. You're forced to play so passively, you might as well not even bother. It's why you would so often see Roadhog and Wrecking Ball as solo tanks. Both of them can frag and output high damage, which is appealing to someone who wants to be on DPS anyway, and both have ways to increase their own health. If they're careful with positioning, they might be okay with limited help from healers. As for healers, sure, they can work without a tank, but there's less protection overall and ult charge generation is slower from lack of high health targets to heal. The biggest downside to this section is probably the length of DPS queues, which are already looking pretty hefty in places. Another concern I've seen is DPS players queuing as tank and support for the lowered times while intending to play their character like a damage dealer anyway. For example, they might pick Moira and only throw out damage orbs and right click. I'm not sure if I've seen this personally yet, but I'll keep an eye open. And moving on to number 1, less opportunities to practice roles in a competitive environment, for tank and support mains especially. There's this old Overwatch joke of what do you call a flex player, a mercy main. If Blizzard have no plans to add a game mode that's in between competitive and quick play, say an unranked mode, then I kind of feel like rolelock is one of the best things we could get for players looking to branch out. A lot of people are unhappy about quick play getting rolelock, and I get it, it's a perfectly valid opinion, but I do appreciate having a low stress environment I can practice in, a place that will reflect my competitive experience and allies that enable me rather than work against. This is also great for new players who will immediately be introduced to the same structure that's found in comp. They'll no longer just be thrown into the deep end when transitioning. Now, from what I can tell, Blizzard hasn't handled competitive MMR between roles perfectly. I don't plan to do damage placements on my main account for a long time because of this, but I can practice elsewhere in the meantime, whether it's a lower SR ult count or quick play. Recently, I've been playing Baptiste so I can bring him into competitive, and he kinda sucks to solo heal with because his self-heal isn't great, but now I'm always guaranteed a buddy. Playing tank in quick play will no longer be this hellish experience either, since you also get a buddy and healers, which might make the role more appealing to people who weren't previously interested. Hopefully, Quick Play Classic will be here to stay since not everyone's a tryhard who cares about the competitive experience. Plus, it'll give DPS players a place to go when queues are especially crazy. I mean, hey, it is called Quick Play. This is looking pretty likely since Jeff recently announced that the arcade will be getting 7 slots instead of its previous 5. That being said, I don't think you have to care about competitive to enjoy 222. I'm sure there are plenty of casual tank and healer players out there who appreciate more structure. You know, there's nothing wrong with wanting to try and win in quick play as long as you're not a dick about it. A few years back, I got an alt account and named it Sombrero with the intention of playing DPS without ruining GM games. Within like a season, it just became a flex account because every other match, I would be the first to pick DPS and then 2 to 4 others would do the same. No one would budge and I'd have a choice. I was fighting a wave of DPS players who had just as much right to pick the role as I did. Since I could play tank and healer to the level Sombrero was at, I might as well be the one to change. Plus, how could I complain about matches like this one on my main account if I was contributing to the problem elsewhere? The most common complaint I've been seeing is that you can't switch your role mid-match, which I definitely feel is a double-edged sword. I saw a lot of posts that were like, I can't switch off Moira to go McCree, and the thing with this is it kinda relied on another teammate to then switch to healer, and that didn't always happen. Like, is our DPS actually bad, or are the tanks that don't want to be on the role in the first place not making space for them to do their job? On the other hand, you might have matches where neither tanks can play Orisa while one of the support lock players can, which genuinely sucks. What Blizzard could maybe do is add the option to swap roles with someone pre-round, but that might also be problematic if someone's skill in one role is drastically higher than the one they queued for. Ultimately, Rolequeue and Unlock both have some benefits and problems of their own, neither are a perfect solution. And that's all from me this time. I'll be returning to Mercy theme guides and videos next week. I hope you enjoyed this little video. I normally don't do this sort of thing. Thank you so much for watching. Feel free to check out my Patreon and have a nice day.